So this is video number 328 here on Johnny Talk Sports. In the other 327, I haven't done really a rant type of video. Maybe I did two of them, but out of all that, I'm not really more of a rant type of guy. But I was inspired by Dave Smith of Free Agency Bias Radio to do a rant here and now again. But I haven't really found things to rant on. But tonight just seems like a beautiful opportunity to do so. And I'm not necessarily a disgruntled fan, because you all know I'm a fan of the Falcons. For those that don't know, I do follow the Falcons a lot. I follow all Atlanta teams, whether it's the Hawks, Braves, Falcons, or the Bulldogs. I follow them here and there. But it just shows that the Falcons continue to prove the doubters correct. Now, going into this season, they had that Super Bowl 20-3 blown lead hanging on their minds all season long. And really, how do they go from 18 minutes away from winning a Super Bowl to now laying an egg in the divisional round? We'll get to that in a little bit. But first, let's just talk about what ultimately led to the demise of the Falcons. In fact, the fourth quarter of Super Bowl 51 ultimately just ignited the lead of the demise. The demise just got worse from there. The demise had Steve Sarkisian being hired as the offensive coordinator. And it was completely Dan Quinn's call to hire Steve Sarkisian. In fact, the Falcons laid, I think, a total of 8 eggs ever since the Matt Ryan era. They laid an egg against the Eagles today, the Patriots in the Super Bowl. They laid an egg in 2014 against the Panthers in a win-and-you're-in game. Lay an egg in a 38 to 3 loss or 34 to 3 loss. Doesn't matter. They lost by at least 30 points. That was just an embarrassing way to end the year that year. Then they laid an egg against the 49ers in the NFC Championship game in 2013. Laid an egg against Green Bay in the divisional round that year. They were the number 1 seed, 13-3. Laid an egg there. Laid it against the Cardinals in the wild card round, Matt Ryan's rookie year. They really laid an egg against the Giants in the wild card round, the year the Giants won their second Super Bowl over the Patriots. So they laid about 7 eggs just in the Matt Ryan era. But the eggs even just get worse from here. They laid an egg in hiring Steve Sarkisian, I feel like. They laid an egg in free agency by letting go Patrick DeMarco, who was a big piece of the Falcons' offense last year. They laid an egg in the draft after trading up to draft Takk McKinley. In fact, I continue to wonder today, maybe Takk McKinley still would have been there at 31 for the Falcons to take. Well, Takk McKinley does play with passion. He plays with heart and passion, but maybe the Falcons would have still been able to take him at 31. But we'll never know, unfortunately. So, based on those eggs that have been laid by the Falcons in the Matt Ryan era alone, they seem to lay about, it feels like maybe, I don't know how many I counted, but for those of you at home, comment below. But I believe I counted about 11 laid eggs just in the Matt Ryan era. And I believe this is Matt Ryan's 10th or 11th year as the Falcons quarterback. That's on average laying an egg a year. And that's just unexcusable. See, how do we go from MVP Matt Ryan last year to Matty Defrost in the Super Bowl to Matty Defrost for half of this season? Because if you look at the numbers and the box scores for the Falcons this year, in fact, I'm going to pull them up. The defense really bailed them out in at least half the games this year. In fact, let's just go through them in order. Defense bailed them out week 1 against Chicago. Defense bailed them out in week 3 against Detroit. Defense bailed them out against the Jets. Defense bailed them out against the Seahawks. Defense bailed them against the Saints on Thursday night. Defense bailed them out on the Monday night game against Tampa Bay. Defense bailed them out in Week 17 against Carolina, and the defense bailed them out last week. So, really, out of those 17, 18 games the Falcons have played, the defense has bailed them out in nearly half of the games. But the defense set them up to win a lot of these games. Look at the games the Falcons lost this year. 23-17 against Buffalo. 23-7 against New England. 20-17 against Carolina. 14-9 against the Vikings. 23-13 against the Saints on Christmas Eve. If you look at the games that the Falcons had lost, the defense set them up for success, but the offense just laid an egg when it mattered. See, the Falcons, they're that team that does good in the first three quarters. And the Super Bowl is just no exception. They do well the first three quarters, but they just choke it away when it matters. That's what the Falcons have done. Basically, their entire franchise, their entire existence of the franchise. They laid an egg in 2004 against the Eagles. Laid an egg in whatever Super Bowl that was, they lost to John Elway. Laid an egg there. The Falcons are just the franchise that lays eggs. In fact, if you could summarize the Falcons franchise, they're the franchise that lays eggs when it matters. They're that type of franchise. And Super Bowl 51 was the ignition point of the demise. Steve Sarkisian, that hire that was under Dan Quinn's approval, they should have just really promoted the quarterbacks coach. That we're getting into the rising action of the fallout for the Falcons. And now we're at the climax of the Falcons' demise. Just the lack of discipline, it just felt like. Maybe the Super Bowl hangover could have something to do with it, but I don't think there's no such thing as a Super Bowl hangover. Because you look at the teams that win championships, it shouldn't matter whether or not that they have that Super Bowl hangover in their minds. Alabama lost a national championship last year. They respond by winning it this year. Clemson lost the national title to Alabama in 2015. They respond by winning it the very next year. The Cubs laid an egg in the National League Championship Series in 2015. They respond next year and win the World Series. So there's really no excuse whether or not you're coming off just the biggest disaster in sports history. There's just no reason. There's no really excuse to not get back to the next year. Because you have the same amount of talent. You've still got Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, Mohamed Sanu, Taylor Gabriel, Devontae Freeman, Tevin Coleman, Austin Hooper, Levine Toilolo, great tight end package. Got Alex Mack at center. You got all the pieces that were from the Super Bowl losing team. And on defense, you still have Trufant, Neal, Poole, Beasley, Grady Jarrett, Deion Jones, Ricardo Allen, Robert Alford. With the depth of the Falcons have on defense, there should be no reason they would go to the NFC Championship game on a consistent basis. But this year, the defense is a championship-winning defense. It's just the offense isn't there. Because the defense held their ground while they could. Only allowing 3 points to the Patriots in the first 2 and 3 quarters of the third quarter in Super Bowl 51. The defense held their ground. It was just the offense that just couldn't continue to score points. So, basically, yes, the Falcons are the Seahawks 2.0. In fact, if the Falcons would have held on in the Super Bowl last year, if they would have won the blowout fashion, we would be comparing this team to the Seahawks. We would be comparing them to Seattle. Are they the Legion of Boom 2.0? Because right now the Legion of Boom is seeming to get dismantled at every bit to the core. And right now this whole Falcons team is set up to get dismantled every bit by bit to the core. Because really, if the Falcons would have held on the Super Bowl, they were on pace to win the Super Bowl, probably 42-13. They were on that pace. And if they would have held on in that Super Bowl, mark my words, we would have, well, you can't really mark them, but it's almost a what-if scenario. What if they would have held on, we'd be comparing to the Seahawks. Because the Seahawks right now are led by a talented defense, not as consistent of an offense, but their defense gets the job done. In fact, if this year says anything, it shows the Falcons are the Seahawks 2.0 because the defense sets them up to win games. The offense just lays eggs half the time. Because how does this Falcons defense never allowed more than 24 points in a game except for one time all season long? In fact, in the 18 games that the Falcons played this year, only one time did that defense allow more than 24 points in a game. And on average, 24 points is that magic number to win games. In fact, if the Falcons would score 24 points each game, they probably would be, you could argue that they could be close to being undefeated. Because the Falcons average 24 points a game, they would be just fine. When we talk about the Falcons, could they possibly finish the job, get the job done? But they couldn't even get the job done in the divisional round against the Eagles with a backup QB. They couldn't even get that done being a 3-point favorite. 70% of the public picked them to win. The Falcons just fall under the pressure. When everybody starts to appreciate what the Falcons do, they just choke it away when it matters. And if they can't fix things, mark my words. Well, let me get to something first. If it weren't for the Falcons' defense, the Falcons probably would be a 6-win team at best. If the defense wasn't the defense that it was, we'd be talking maybe the Falcons would be a 6-10 team. They'd almost be the Bears, in my opinion. A team that has talented pieces on defense that can win them games, but their offense just completely lays an egg when it matters. In fact, mark my words, if things don't change next year to the Falcons, whether or not changing offensive coordinators, whether it's not building in free agency, whether it's not drafting good talent, mark my words, next year we're going to talk about the Falcons turning in to the laughingstock of the NFL. We're going to be talking about that because right now the laughingstock started in the Super Bowl, and right now it's starting to continue. If anything, they're proving the doubters right. They're showing that they deserve to be a laughingstock. In fact, mark my words, if things don't change offensively, or they're not changing offensive coordinators, trying to find somebody in free agency that can really boost the offense, or boost the whole team in general, mark my words, next year the Falcons will go 6-10, at best 7-9. Because if it weren't for that defense this year, at best, the Falcons are a 6-7 win team. That's just how I feel about it. In fact, I discussed with Sammy Buckets earlier today, right after this game. The Falcons do need to fix holes. There are a lot of holes they need to fix. And also, he says that Dan Quinn should be in the hot seat right now. And I think Dan Quinn should be in the hot seat. In fact, I believe after it was the New England game, people were talking about Dan Quinn's going to get fired next year if the Falcons just can't get it together. People were thinking Dan Quinn would go this year. Keanu Neal really cost him the game because he was trying to show off his hops instead of trying to get the interception. In fact, that led to a 3-point swing. And just think about what would have happened. First and goal from the 9-yard line. If it weren't for those 3 points at the end of the half, we could be talking about maybe the Falcons running down that clock, setting up for money Matt Bryant, and probably they're in the NFC Championship game. But do I think the Falcons would have beaten New Orleans or Minnesota? Probably not, because their offense wasn't equipped for it. The defense would be equipped for it, but I think the offense would have just laid an egg that next week. So basically, in my opinion, for the Falcons, it was either lay an egg this week or lay an egg the next week. In fact, here's how Sam McBuckets feels, and myself kind of, about Dan Quinn. That he's an elite defensive coordinator, but a bad head coach. And I couldn't really agree anymore. And let me just go back to first and goal from the 9-yard line. You're basically in 4-down territory at this point, about a minute 50 left. First and goal from the 9-yard line. Tevin Coleman was the dominant running back of the day for the Falcons. How do they not continue to feed Tevin Coleman? In fact, a lot of experts were saying, I've seen a lot of people throughout comments pregame and throughout the week. They expect a heavy dose of Tevin Coleman. That's what they produced. But they just seem to abandon the running game. That's what Steve Sarkisian did in the title game against Clemson last year. He abandoned the running game when the running game is what got him to that point. And abandoning the running game was just unacceptable. First go for the 9-yard line. 4 chances to get 9 yards. Get 3 yards of play, and you're in, score a touchdown, possibly head to the NFC Championship game. So the Falcons had the intangibles to win the game today. They had the intangibles to get to the NFC title game. But they just completely just laid an egg. But if you notice, how did the Falcons respond? They just proved the doubters correct. That's what they did this year. Without Kyle Shanahan, Matt Ryan just proves that he's just an average quarterback. Mediocre quarterback. Andy Dalton in a dome. But if you just look at how teams win and respond to adversity, like with Alabama and Clemson responding and winning championship games or losing the previous year, the Cubs laying an egg in the National League Championship Series 2015 respond to win the World Series. The teams that win championships are the ones that respond to the adversity. The Falcons didn't do that. They just added more adversity to themselves. And that's just what it's going to lead to. In fact, for as long as Steve Sarkisian is the offensive coordinator for the Falcons, I don't even know if I can watch another game of this Falcons team. And it's honestly what I expect. Every game this year I expected the defense to do their job. The offense is going to struggle. The further along the season went, I just had less confidence in this offense. The defense held their ground this year. It was just the offense that just laid an egg. But I think this is the first year in the Matt Ryan era that the defense was better than the offense. That's honestly not really a statement that should be even made at all. And for as long as Steve Sarkisian is the offensive coordinator, I don't even know if I can just deal with watching this Falcons team week by week by week, considering that it's just a lead to disappointment. If you sum up the franchise, it's just the franchise that lays eggs. But if you look at teams that win championships, notice that they respond to the adversity. How do the Patriots remain consistent? They respond to the adversity. Deflategate, Spygate. Whether or not the Patriots franchise is the dynasty is coming to an end. Every time the Patriots are faced with adversity, they respond with victory after victory. Alabama, they respond with winning games. The Cubs, they responded with winning the 2016 World Series. The teams that win championships always respond to adversity. How do you think the Golden State Warriors won the championship last year? They responded to the 3-1 lead adversity. How did LeBron James win the finals that year? He responded to the adversity, being down 3-1. If LeBron ends up winning the championship this year, how would he do it? By responding to the adversity. And right now, the Falcons haven't responded to the adversity whatsoever. They've just added more to themselves for next year. And in fact, let's go over again what's happened with the Seahawks ever since losing Super Bowl 49. Lost in the divisional round. Lost in the divisional round, missing the playoffs. The Falcons are heading down that road. In fact, Dan Quinn might be on the hot seat right now. Because when you take over the Falcons, there's no reason to not win a Super Bowl within 4 or 5 years. When you have Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, running game of Devontae Freeman, Tevin Coleman, Mohamed Sanu, Taylor Gabriel, especially when you have the intangibles on defense, there's no reason you shouldn't win the Super Bowl within 4 years. And right now, Dan Quinn should be on the hot seat right now. He should be in the hot seat going into next season. In fact, if Dan Quinn ends up being fired next year, it's not going to surprise me whatsoever. In fact, I fully expect that to happen. Anyway, that's just all I have for you tonight. Like and subscribe to the channel. Share it with your friends and family. I'll see you next time. Is it time to part ways with Steve Sarkisian? Probably. And for as long as he's offensive coordinator, I've already admitted I don't know if I can even deal with this Falcons franchise. with Steve Sarkisian being offensive coordinator. So I think that was probably the hire that will lead basically to a lolcow or basically to the bottomless pit of the Falcons franchise. Anyway, I'll see you next time.